Hey, everybody, this is John Darr and my friend
Marie Banks.
with Schackow Mercadante. We're excited that you joined us today for the next episode of In Case It Happens, because today we will talk about uninsured motorists. And Marie and I have lots of conversations about uninsured motorists. It is a very important coverage that is not required in the state of Florida um, per law, but I say it's required for anybody with a brain. So, um, anyway, we are going to talk about uninsured motorists today. We hope we bring value to you and you learn a little bit of something about uninsured motorists and how important it is. So, I'm going to hand it over to my co-host, Marie Banks, who is going to kick us off with uninsured motorists.
Let me just give you some statistics. It seems, and John, you're going to have to back me up, but last time I checked, I think about 1 in 4 drivers, meaning one in 4 drivers in the state of Florida is uninsured, meaning they do not have bodily injury coverage on an automobile policy, or perhaps they don't even have an automobile policy for the car. Maybe it's lapsed. They're driving around. They have a registered vehicle with the state. The state thinks they have insurance. They actually don't have insurance. Or if they have it, they don't have important coverage called bodily injury. And so that's 1 in 4 drivers. What is that? 25% of the people driving around don't have insurance that's going to cover you if they hit you, if they cause an accident, they run a red light, they rear end you, whatever it might be.
That's
they
crazy.
don't have insurance to pay for your injuries. And so I think I'm always trying to help people understand why that's so important to them, because I think we're driving around in our cars every day and we don't think about the possibility of getting in an accident because nobody wants to think about that risk. But literally, it's the riskiest thing we do every day. We get in the car and we drive around. And do you think people are not distracted driving? Do you think people are actually following the rules? I mean, I see road rage. I see people on their phones, people in a rush to get somewhere. I mean, I feel like I can't drive down the road on the way to work and not see some accident that's happened. So to think that it's not going to happen to you is a little bit naive. And John and I are obviously very interested in people understanding the risk and being prepared. And so I'll also say every client that's walked in our doors, we're not expecting the accident to happen when it happened. They're on their way to drop off their kids at school, or they were going to work, or they're on their way to some important meeting. It's never convenient to get in an accident. It's never, never, ever expected. So you really have to force yourself to plan ahead, right, John?
Absolutely. And isn't auto insurance in Florida, like, don't you have to have it, Ray? Isn't like it's required by the state. So how in the world do we have 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 people driving around without any insurance? That's not even talking about the people that have 10-20 limits, 10,000 per
Minimal.
person,
Right.
20,000. That doesn't even include those folks. So
Right.
why in the heck do people drive around without insurance? It's crazy.
Because Florida is one of, I think now only 2 states in the nation that does not require registered vehicles to have bodily injury coverage on their insurance policy. So I think we probably need to explain what that means. When you purchase a vehicle or you register it with the state of Florida and you're required to show insurance, all you're required to have is something called personal injury protection and
Which
something
covers
called,
them, which covers the
right,
driver of the car.
if I get in an accident, even if it's my fault, I have $10,000 that will go towards my medical treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go to certain places in town, that $10,000 might go away really quickly. So that's personal injury protection. You're required to have that in the state of Florida. You're also required to have property damage, and that's going to pay for the other person's vehicle if you cause an accident and you mess up their car. you're only obligated to have about $10,000 worth of property damage coverage, which for a lot of people driving around, their car might be worth more than $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
So literally that's it. That's all you're required to have: personal injury protection and property damage. So when people tell me, oh, I have full coverage or whatever they might think that means, I've got whatever is required, that's all that's required. And it's not enough. It is not enough. And so most of the people driving around have no idea that the state of Florida actually requires you to have uninsured motorist coverage or waive it. So it's so important to the state that you take care of yourself and be insured that you actually have to sign a waiver saying, I'm rejecting uninsured motorist coverage. It's important coverage. I'm going to reject it and take the risk. A lot of people don't know they're signing that waiver because they're probably going online, to one of the big companies and getting their policy and everything like that. And they're just clicking through. Oh, there's, they don't know that what they're actually.
They don't know what they're buying or not buying. Correct.
So important to have an agent explain everything to you, right?
Yeah, and there's something called stacked uninsured. To further confuse things, there's something called stacked and unstacked, and we'll do that that'll be a whole separate podcast on stacked and unstacked. But for today, we're basically just talking about the basics of uninsured motorist and what that means. And, in case it happens to you, how does it work? How does Marie get involved? How does the insurance company get involved? Who does what? How does that work? So let's say you're driving down the road and you are doing everything in the right and you are hit by somebody that either doesn't have insurance or doesn't have enough insurance. So if you're hit by a driver without any insurance, or you're hit by a driver with minimum limits or not enough coverage, and you walk in to see Marie Banks at Schackow Mercadante, what happens next? So you sit down with folks and you consult with them, and that's free. That doesn't cost anything, right? And anybody that comes and sits down with Marie is like, look, we're just going to talk about what happened. Let's talk about your injuries. Let's talk about options, that sort of thing. And do they have to worry about, because essentially they sue their own insurance company is from what I understand how it works. And talk through that a little bit. When you guys sit down with them, you establish, some basis and go through and get treatments and all that kind of stuff. But
sure,
talk a little bit about how uninsured motorist claims work with that sort of thing. And if you have an example,
sure. I can give you an example. We used to do uninsured motorist claims all the time. But if somebody gets in an accident and they come to do a consult with us, the consultation's free and we work on a contingency fee anyway. So if somebody decides to hire us to represent them, they're only paying us if we end up getting them a settlement. We'll take a percentage. So there's no retainer or hourly bills or anything like that. Nice. The first stage is always going to be, there's an investigation period. We've got to find out coverage. Why is that significant? Because if somebody walks into our office, they're injured, they've been in an accident, and it may have happened yesterday, or it may have happened last week, or maybe a couple months ago, and things haven't resolved and they're in a lot of pain now. They don't even know where to go. Who should I see? I call that car accident chaos. What do I do next? I don't want to deal with all these insurance companies. I don't know what to do. So we really shepherd them through what type of treatment they might need, and we handle all the insurance claims and investigating. If the other person, the person who caused the accident, doesn't have bodily injury coverage, we can't do anything for this client unless they have uninsured motorist coverage on their own policy. The reason we can't do anything is because there's no money. And all we're doing in the civil system, the way it's designed, the only remedy that the civil system can think of for someone who's been injured by someone else's negligence is, hey, you've got to pay them for their medical bills. You've got to pay them for lost wages if they haven't been able to work. And you have to pay them for any pain and suffering, loss of normal life activity, things like that. If there's no insurance policy to make that claim, then your only other option is to sue the person personally in a court of law. But if somebody doesn't have bodily injury coverage on their auto policy, they probably don't have assets. And if they don't have assets or money in the bank, you can go through a whole lawsuit. You can get a jury to return a verdict of $100,000 for you, and it means nothing. You've actually just spent $20,000 to $50,000 to bring the case, because it's going to cost a lot of money, court fees, deposing expert physicians, things like that, to get nothing. So we really are, our hands are tied if there's no bodily injury coverage. And even though this person's injured, it's unfair. There's nothing they can do. There's nothing we can do for them. So if they don't have the uninsured motorist coverage, it's over. I've sat down across from people, they're very injured, and I've had to say, there's nothing we can do to help you. I'm so sorry. We'll run an asset check. We'll make sure that we're not missing anything. This person just, doesn't have another property somewhere or lots of money in the bank. But outside of that, we can't do anything. Now, if they have uninsured motorist coverage, the story's different. And it's not that we immediately file a lawsuit against their own insurance company. We make a claim. You have to be able to prove that our client was not at fault for the accident, because uninsured will only kick in if the insured is not at fault. And so people worry about their insurance rates going up, and you can tell them, John, they don't go up. They'll go up for other reasons, but if you didn't cause the accident, the insurance rate, the premium should not increase because of the accident. So we pursue a claim against uninsured motorist coverage. And so I had a woman a few years ago who was in a bad accident. It was a rear end accident, a high speed rear end accident, and she was pretty severely injured. So the person who hit her didn't have insurance. And thankfully, my client did. She had about $250,000 worth of uninsured motorist coverage. And let me tell you how significant that was. Because of her injuries, she had to treat a lot with various doctors. Her total, I'm looking at the bill chart from that, her total medical expenses for injuries related to that accident were $255,000. She had surgery on her back. Now, she did have health insurance, and they paid about $68,000 and did some adjustments. So she would have owed, without that insurance lien,
roughly $190,000, yeah.
Been out of pocket $23,000. So if this person, who didn't have insurance, they hit her. If she didn't have uninsured motorist, she would be out of pocket $23,000 and would have no compensation for any of it, any of the pain she's gone through, any of her lost wages from not being able to work through that. And that's the part that, as lawyers, we're trying to help our clients be compensated for what they've gone through. So because she had that $250,000 in uninsured motorist coverage, we were able to successfully get all of it. The insurance company tendered the whole policy. We were able to pay off all of any liens that she had, medical bills, and then she was able to walk away with a substantial amount in her pocket as well for any future treatment she might need, things like that. So that's just an example of why it's so significant to have uninsured motorists, because she just would have had to pay all that out of her own pocket, and that's not fair.
Yeah. And it's important to know. I'm going to give you a little secret. I'm going to pull back the curtain on the insurance carrier side. Insurance carriers actually don't like us to sell uninsured motorist, because they know how much that they pay out in claims on uninsured motorist. It is by far the most important coverage you can buy. I tell that to people all the time. When you look at an auto policy, we start with uninsured motorist. And I don't really care if you're driving one of these $100,000, I don't know, Range Rovers, Land Cruisers, whatever they are, high-end vehicle. Comp and collision is fine, but it all starts and ends with uninsured motorist, because you're insuring, and when you buy uninsured motorist, you're insuring everyone around you. No matter who hits you, you've got coverage there. And that's why I say it's the most important coverage on an auto policy. And I'm sure Marie will agree, because out of 100 cases, Marie, how many of them are uninsured motorist cases? I mean, do you have an idea of, like, is it a ridiculously high percentage as far as that goes, or
I would say totally uninsured, it's probably about 25%, no bodily injury coverage. And then as far as having minimal, that's a whole separate thing. We're talking about underinsured now.
Mhm, mhm,
People who only have a small amount, maybe they only
mhm,
have $10,000 in bodily injury coverage. I'd say that could be as much as 60% of the claims we see. So sometimes we're working with, my client doesn't have uninsured motorists or, underinsured motorists, which would attach on top of the 10,000 that we're getting from the at fault party.
mhm,
They don't have that, then we're working with this tiny little pot of money of 10,000 and trying to make everything work, and they might walk away with a couple $1,000s in their pocket, but they're still really injured.
mhm,
That's a lot of the time. And there's also times like right now, I have a client who he was in a severe intersection accident,
mhm,
really bad injuries, now seeing a neurosurgeon, but the driver only had 10,000
mm.
in bodily injury, but he has something crazy like, 300,000 stacked uninsured motorists. He has two vehicles. So he actually has like 600,000 available to him in uninsured motorist coverage. And so
Mhm,
he can rest easy knowing if I need surgery, if I need all this other stuff, I'm not working with just this tiny little $10,000 pot of money. And I
mhm.
think because of inflation right now, people are going to their agents or they're going to wherever they're going to get their insurance online, and they're cutting back on their coverage because they don't want to pay the premium. And I get that. It's really hard right now to
Yeah,
make.
right now I mean, it's definitely auto rates are definitely increasing, and people are looking to save, and everything's getting more expensive and all that kind of stuff. But it's just the one thing that you shouldn't cut. Get rid of towing, get rid get rid of rental car reimbursement if I mean, do something there. And then uninsured motorist has to be increased equally with your bodily injury. So you can't go buy a whole lot of uninsured motorist and then not buy bodily injury. So it sort of goes up in unison with each other. And then we'll talk about the, like I said, the stacked and unstacked is a whole
Yeah.
nother podcast. But
I have a
today
question for you though, John,
yeah.
because people wonder, it sounds like this is really important coverage. If I have it, I really don't want my premium to go up much. Does it cost a lot extra to have uninsured motorists typically on a policy?
It depends on the situation. I've seen where uninsured motorists can be really expensive and be a huge part of the policy. It is usually less expensive than the bodily injury piece. So we have some people come in and they go, okay, I want 100, 300, or 250, 500 bodily injury, but I don't want uninsured motorist. uh I would rather see them buy 50, 100 of each than get a whole lot of bodily injury and no uninsured motorist. So again, I try to encourage people or recommend people that they keep it equal when you increase uninsured motorist. And when you look at bodily injury to uninsured motorist costs, yes, uninsured motorist costs will be less expensive because it happens for sure, but it's a little bit less likely to happen, that kind of situation. But the uninsured motorist is, it all starts and ends with uninsured motorist. So if you're trying to allocate your premium dollar towards your auto insurance, start there and get as much of that as you can afford, and then go to some of the other things. Because like
Right.
if you're in an accident with, full disclosure, you're in an accident that is your fault, or maybe it's a single car accident where you just hit a tree or something like that, uninsured motorist doesn't come into play. So you've got to be in a situation or in an accident where uninsured motorist is involved, or an underinsured motorist is involved.
Right. And it's so important to also know if you're somebody with some type of substantial assets, you really need to be well covered, especially on the bodily injury side. And that's something definitely need to talk to an agent about, because when I'm looking at someone who's caused an accident and I see they're underinsured, I'm going to check assets. And there are ways to find out if you own a boat and you own several homes and I see you're underinsured. Now I have to advise my client, you could file a lawsuit against this person.
Mm-hmm.
And now your own personal assets are on the hook if a jury returns a verdict.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to have to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but we're also trying to figure out what's fair. My client did not cause this accident. They were just driving to work. And you were on your phone and you crashed into them and you don't have enough insurance coverage. You're in trouble. And so you really need to make sure that your coverages are good. And I'm going to do a shameless plug here because I started doing this, offering these free accident preparedness sessions. And because I'm so passionate about this, I want people to have good coverage. And so I'm sitting down with people for an hour at no charge, and I'm explaining what everything is in automobile insurance, what you need. Let's get together an emergency plan in the event that you're in an accident. We'll put everything on paper and you can keep it in your glove box. And I just want people to be prepared, because it's the worst thing when you don't expect it and you get in an accident, you really don't know what to do next. A lot of people I'm the first person they call. What do I do? I'm like, get off the phone with me, call the police.
Yeah. Call 911. Yeah.
Tomorrow. So anyway.
That's why I love Marie. Marie goes the extra mile and does things that I don't know of any attorneys doing. So, here you have somebody that is willing to sit down with you that, frankly, is not selling insurance. She gets nothing out of, it's not like it's, people, when they talk to us a lot of times they're thinking, oh, you're just trying to sell me insurance. I promise you, the amount of commission we make on each policy, it's not that much. So, we try to coach people and help people understand what it's like. And if you've got a 16-year-old, an 18-year-old, a young kid, what a huge value if you bring them into Marie's office and sit down with them and say, okay, little Johnny, if you get in an accident, here are the steps you should take to protect yourself. Here's who you're supposed to call. Here, all the things. So what a great service. It's not a shameless plug. I think a lot of folks should take advantage of it because it's a huge, value differential, but what makes you different than every other attorney out there.
I like doing it. John and I deal with this every day. It's our job. Of course, people don't want to think about it, but in the same way that you would make plans for your death by going to an estate attorney or, trying to get things in order, I think this is just as important.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, hopefully we have brought significant value to you. We've talked about uninsured motorist. In case it happens, what do you do? Thank you, Marie Banks, for being here. It's always fun to do a podcast with you and talk insurance and law and all the fun things. So I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad we got to talk. We're both pretty passionate about uninsured motorists. So.
Yes, exactly.
Multiple episodes about that.
We had to have it in the top 3 for sure. So I'm excited we got the first one out of the way. And I would bet it's not going to be the last one about uninsured motorists. So
there's lots of nuances we'll explain.
Exactly. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast. We appreciate you watching and taking the time today. And if you have a comment below. We love comments. Tell us you like it. Tell us if you have questions. Now's your chance to ask some questions. So feel free to comment below. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Have a great day.